Experience demonstrates disorientation is the largest single cause of helicopter fatal serious injury accident. There is a strong relationship between helicopter handling characteristics, visual cueing conditions, and pilot capabilities, which, although allowed individually by the regulations, can be predicted to be unmanageable in combination. The great majority of helicopters with their basic equipment fit are technically unstable. Smaller helicopters have to meet less stringent stability requirements during certification than do their larger counterparts. To compensate for this reduced level of stability, helicopters in this class are restricted to flight in visual meteorological conditions. The only way that helicopters can meet the IFR requirements is through the use of Artificial Stability Equipment, ASE. It is worth noting that these higher standards are only approximately equivalent to those required of small fixed-wing aircrafts for VMC flights. Larger helicopters tend to have ASE fitted as standard and are normally capable of flight in IMC. Smaller helicopters are at a particular disadvantage here, as they are much less likely to have such equipment due to its cost, complexity, and weight. Therefore, the pilot has to provide the stability and needs visual cues to do so. In VMC, the pilot navigates the aircraft and controls its motion and state using information that he derives from looking out of the window. This includes navigational references such as roads, rivers, railway lines, and other landmarks, and attitude cues from the natural horizon. Significant information is also derived from the more subtle parameters of motion parallax, edge rate, and looming of objects, which are only available to the pilot in poor visibilities or when the natural horizon is no more visible, like when the sea merges with the sky, depriving the pilot from natural horizon. Adequate visibility and visual range alone will not necessarily ensure adequate visual cues for maintaining safe flight. For an average VFR-only certificated helicopter without ASE, the pilot workload, attentional demand, for flight control alone is likely to rise rapidly from around 25 to 30% in VMC to 100% in poor visual conditions. Loss of navigational references, apart from getting lost and possibly colliding with an obstacle or high ground, can significantly distract the pilot from the near-term guidance, from stabilization tasks, and from the cockpit instrument, if equipped, for significant periods of time. Unconscious loss of airspeed can contribute to loss of height, and since stability reduces with reducing airspeed, also leads to loss of control. A navigation aid, such as a global positioning system, could alleviate pilot workload during encounters with degraded visual cueing environments, allowing the pilot to apply greater resources to the task of maintaining control of the aircraft. It has been suggested that the availability of such systems could encourage pilots to fly when they might otherwise think twice, leading to increased exposure to poor visual cueing environments. Pilots often attempt to maneuver to escape or avoid the region of impaired visibility by climbing above it, descending below it, or backtracking. Unfortunately, anything other than very gentle maneuvering increases the demand for visual cues, increasing the likelihood of disorientation and loss of control. Where the loss of visual cues is either wholly or partially due to poor scene content, it is quite possible that the pilot is unaware of a subtle loss of visual references. Sometimes, the pilots attempt to cope with the deteriorating conditions and do not appreciate the danger until it is too late. Any delay in the transfer of referencing to the aircraft instruments could result in critical attitude and disorientation. Recovery from the unusual attitude requires an immediate and disciplined response, which can be summed up as wings level using the attitude indicator, including balance. Attitude. Adopt attitude indicator, bar-to-bar relationship, using the attitude indicator for straight and level flight. Speed. Check speed is above 30 knots, vortex ring awareness, and below VNE. Power. Apply power for cruise or max available power to establish climb, if below safety altitude.
Before entering degraded visual conditions, divert or land. When inadvertently losing visual reference, it may be very difficult to cope with sensorial illusions and spatial disorientation.
Spatial disorientation, reflex input, upset, situational awareness, recovery actions, bank 0 degree, pitch for level of flight.
After stabilizing flight, consider options.
Climb power settings, VY.
Climb above safety altitude. Make a 180-degree turn.
Bank 30 degrees maximum. Prefer 8-1 turn.
Then declare an emergency and get help from ATC.
Squawk 7700.
Speed reduction may be a decision for its benefits, but may sometimes be unconscious. If you have to reduce your speed because of the reducing ceiling and visibility, consider a precautionary landing. Be aware of your technical and regulatory capabilities. Know at any time your position in the flight domain of your aircraft. Exit area of impaired ceiling and visibility or land. Exit area of impaired ceiling and visibility or land.
Regulation cannot fully take into account the complexity of real situations. Pilot analysis, judgment, and decision-making are the only safeguards to face with these complex combinations involving human factor to a high level. Vulnerable. The human being has the ability to develop its skills to deal with such complex situations. Keep in sight that in aviation, caution is a skill which has to be constantly maintained and developed to be effective.
The red line represents both the separation between technical and regulatory capabilities from one side to the other, and along its length, the transition in the helicopter flight domain between cruise and hovering characteristics. The white lines represent the latest opportunity, depending on the pilot ratings and experience, for a timely decision.
The European Helicopter Safety Team wishes you pleasant and safe flights.